It was the summer of 2019 when we moved to Albany. My husband had taken a new job at a nearby college, and we figured it was time for a fresh start. Our daughter, Zoe, was 12. She was always a bright, observant kid with a deep love for reading and this quiet curiosity that reminded me a lot of myself at her age. I work as a librarian, so naturally, I'd passed on the bookworm gene. We spent the first few weeks unpacking, exploring the area, and settling into routines. Everything felt optimistic, like we were finally entering a chapter that would bring stability. We enrolled Zoe at a well-rated middle school close to our neighborhood. It had great reviews, solid faculty, and a clean, safe campus. She was nervous but eager. Her first week went well. She liked most of her classes, but the one she seemed most excited about was English. She came home buzzing about how great her English teacher was, Mr. Caldwell. "He's really nice," she said one night over dinner. "He recommended this fantasy book I've never heard of. It's not even in the school library." I smiled at that. Teachers who went out of their way to nurture curiosity were rare, and I appreciated it. She talked about him often, how he encouraged her writing, complimented her vocabulary, even pulled her aside after class to talk about themes and structure. He seemed passionate about literature and attentive to individual students. It sounded innocent, encouraging, even. Then, maybe a month in, I got an email from Mr. Caldwell. It was friendly, complimentary. He introduced himself, said Zoe had been a joy to teach, and that he'd noticed her potential. He attached a short list of advanced reading suggestions tailored to her sensibilities, and mentioned he'd given her one of his personal copies of a book since it wasn't available in the school's collection. I responded, thanking him, told him I appreciated the personal attention. As a librarian, I understood the importance of fostering a love for literature. We even emailed once more about a recommendation for a young adult author Zoe might like. But then the emails kept coming. They weren't inappropriate, not exactly. Just detailed, thoughtful. Pages of commentary on Zoe's essays, descriptions of how her writing made him think about certain philosophical ideas. He'd send quotes from books they hadn't covered in class. There was a level of personal engagement that felt unusual, more like an academic mentorship than a student-teacher interaction. I asked Zoe how things were going in English, and she said she loved it, said Mr. Caldwell was the only teacher who really gets how she thinks. That stuck with me. I remember the way she said it, with so much admiration and almost a sense of loyalty. Still, something began to nag at me. One evening, after she went to bed, I opened her backpack to leave a note about her orthodontist appointment. I noticed a slim, leather-bound journal tucked between her folders. It wasn't school-issued. Inside were pages of Zoe's handwriting, intermixed with margin notes in another hand. Neat, tidy writing. Feedback not just on her stories, but on her personal thoughts. Hints of encouragement, and then this, scrawled in the upper right corner of one page. "Some thoughts are too important to share with just anyone. Keep this between us." I sat there for a long time. The next morning, I asked Zoe about it. She looked embarrassed but not alarmed. Said Mr. Caldwell had given her the journal to help her explore things privately, that it was like a safe space, and she wasn't supposed to talk about it because it would ruin it. I emailed him that afternoon. I told him I appreciated the effort, but felt uncomfortable with the idea of secret correspondence. He replied almost instantly. Said he was sorry, that he understood, and that the intention was purely academic. He promised to discontinue the journal project and thanked me for my honesty. But after that, Zoe came home quieter. She didn't talk about English anymore. She started skipping her reading time, and I noticed her spending more time alone in her room with the door shut, and I didn't want to plant doubt in her head unnecessarily. So I waited, observed, took mental notes. A couple of weeks later, he emailed me again. This time about Zoe's emotional maturity. He referenced her capacity for empathy and how rare it was to find a student so attuned to adult concepts. I didn't respond. Instead, I called the school. I asked to meet with the vice principal, brought the journal, explained the pattern, the emails, private books, the secrecy, the language. They gave me the usual routine: nods, note-taking, and vague promises. A week passed, no follow-up. When I finally called again, I was told the matter had been reviewed. No violations were found. Mr. Caldwell was a highly respected member of the faculty. They assured me that they had spoken with him and reminded all teachers of professional boundaries. But nothing in his conduct was deemed actionable. I tried to drop it, told myself I was overreacting. But Zoe had started waking up in the middle of the night, saying she had headaches. Her grades in other classes slipped. One night, while doing dishes, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. No, I can't say anything. He told me not to. It would mess everything up. I walked into her room and asked who she was talking about. She looked at me like I'd just caught her stealing. Then she broke down crying. She told me Mr. Caldwell had been asking her to write about personal things. Dreams, fears, things she hadn't even told me. That he said their bond was special and people might not understand it. That if she told anyone, she'd ruin it. That he trusted her more than anyone else. I don't even remember how I got to the school, just storming into the office the next morning with the journal and my daughter's retelling. This time, the tone shifted. They still wouldn't say much, but they agreed to launch a formal investigation. I pulled Zoe out of school for a week. A month later, Mr. Caldwell resigned. There was no statement, no warning to other parents. He just left, quietly. I only found out why because another mom, someone I barely knew, called me out of the blue. Her daughter had experienced something similar. Journals, private conversations, compliments that felt too heavy. She said she'd gone to the school too. Weeks before I did. They hadn't done anything. Zoe's doing better now. We got her into therapy. We don't talk about Mr. Caldwell much, but sometimes I catch her journaling again. Openly this time. She lets me read it. It's silly, funny, chaotic, like a kid should be. Still, I'll never stop wondering what would have happened if she hadn't spoken up. What if I hadn't believed her? What if I let it slide just a little longer? I bought a tablet during a spring sale. One of those bright plastic kids models with chunky corners and a rubber bumper around the edge. It was supposed to be a reward. My daughter Riley had done so well transitioning into kindergarten, and between my job as a first grade teacher and being a single mom, I figured a little extra screen time wouldn't hurt, as long as it was educational. It wasn't about letting her rot her brain with cartoons. It was about giving her something engaging while I handled dinner or grading or finally sitting down for a minute after work. I set up every possible restriction. Locked down the browser, approved apps only. I read every review, triple-checked the parental controls. I even sat with her the first few days, watching her trace letters and match shapes with cartoon animals. I showed her how to close out apps, how to tell me if she accidentally clicked something unfamiliar. It seemed safe. It seemed normal. For a while, it was. Riley took to it quickly. She especially liked a drawing app where she could color over digital storybooks. She named each character, gave them voices. It was adorable. She'd giggle at the tablet, whisper to it like it was her playmate. I just saw a kid with a vivid imagination. I was proud of how creative she was. Then, one night after dinner, she told me Marcus liked her new pajamas. Marcus? My friend in the tablet, she said, like it was obvious. He said blue is my color. I laughed, a little nervously, and asked which game Marcus was from. She shrugged. He doesn't live in a game. He just lives in there. I didn't think much of it. Kids create imaginary friends all the time, and I figured maybe one of the apps had a character named Marcus. When I checked later, though, none of the apps had anyone by that name. I even Googled the names of the characters in the game she used. Nothing. Still, it didn't seem harmful, so I brushed it off. But Marcus kept coming up. At breakfast, Marcus says we should get the strawberry cereal next time. At bedtime, Marcus says I should sleep on the left side of the bed. She wasn't saying these things with a smile like she was playing. It was casual, factual, like she was just relaying a conversation. Then, one evening, I passed by her room and heard her whispering. Not talking, whispering. I paused outside her door, hearing only one voice at first. Then a second voice, quiet and distorted, answered back. I opened the door. She was sitting on the floor, tablet propped up in her lap, the glow lighting her face in the dark. She looked up and smiled. "He says you look tired," she said. I yanked the tablet away, startled. The screen had gone black. There was no app running. I asked her who she was talking to, and she just said, "Marcus. He was helping me draw." I didn't sleep well that night. The next morning before school, I checked the tablet's usage logs. Nothing abnormal. No apps were active during the time I heard the voices. The microphone permissions were off. I even reset the device, just to be safe. Gave it back to her reluctantly, but told myself I was being paranoid. A few days later, she came into the kitchen while I was grading papers. She looked confused. "Mom, why did Marcus say you cried yesterday?" I hadn't told her I'd been crying. It had been late, after she was asleep. I sat on the couch, overwhelmed and exhausted, and let it out quietly. No one could have heard me. Not unless... I took the tablet that night and kept it with me. I scoured it for anything out of place. Hidden apps, secret messaging functions, Bluetooth pairings. I wasn't just guessing anymore. I needed answers. I dove deep into online forums, especially ones frequented by cybersecurity enthusiasts and parents who'd had odd tech experiences. One thread led to another, and then I found it. A niche forum filled with cases of tablets and smart devices being used as access points for digital intrusions. Some of the stories were nearly identical. Hackers gaining remote access to devices marketed toward children. A few even claimed that people had found ways to activate microphones and cameras, even when they were disabled in the settings. One woman shared how her son's toy camera would light up randomly at night. Another said her daughter's toy tablet played back her voice hours after she'd gone to sleep. I felt sick. That's when I stopped trying to explain it away. I packed the tablet up and locked it in my bedroom drawer. Riley cried. She begged to have it back, saying Marcus would be lonely. That night, I left the tablet off, tucked away. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to a soft, buzzing sound. I sat up and saw light flickering from my drawer. The tablet was on. I hadn't touched it. It glowed faintly, like it was trying to wake itself up. I slowly opened the drawer. The screen lit fully and displayed a blank white page. Then, in black letters, it typed, "Why did you lie to her?" I dropped the tablet, The screen cracked against the hardwood floor, but it didn't power off. The sentence remained. A second one followed. She trusts me. You don't. My hands were shaking as I walked to the kitchen. I grabbed a hammer from the drawer, came back, and stood over the tablet. It blinked again, the screen flashing from white to black like it was thinking or waiting. I brought the hammer down once, twice, 3 times. Pieces flew across the room. The light died. The buzzing stopped. The silence was instant and absolute. I told Riley it broke. She was quiet for days. She stopped drawing. She stopped talking to herself at night. Her energy dimmed like something had been taken out of her. I don't know what Marcus was, but he didn't sound like a child. If you're a parent listening to this, please be careful. Just because a device says it's child-friendly doesn't mean it's safe. Hackers are finding ways to get in through the smallest cracks, even with permissions turned off. Don't assume parental controls are enough. Stay alert, stay informed, and never ignore your instincts when something feels off. It was one of those crisp Florida winter mornings, the kind where it's just cool enough for a sweater, but the sun still feels warm on your skin. I remember buckling Melanie into her car seat while she babbled to herself, waving one socked foot in the air like she was dancing to a song only she could hear. She was 7 months old at the time, still in that beautiful blur of infancy, where every little thing is a discovery. The way light moved across the dashboard, the crinkle of a grocery bag, even the jingling of my keys made her eyes widen with wonder. We were headed to the grocery store. Just a quick trip. Diapers, formula, eggs, the usual. I pulled into the lot around 9:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. The parking lanes were mostly empty. Just a few early birds and retirees. It was part of our weekly routine. Same store, same aisle route, same cart with the wobbly wheel I always seemed to pick. I parked a little further out so no one would ding the car doors, loaded Melanie into the stroller, tucked her little blanket around her, and we went inside. Nothing felt off. Nothing looked strange. Not at first. We took our time. I always liked to narrate what I was doing to her, just to hear the sound of my own voice and maybe teach her a word or two. Okay, we're in produce. Bananas or apples today, kiddo? She cooed and kicked her feet like she was actually voting. We cruised down the cereal aisle, grabbed some oatmeal, turned into dairy. I stopped for a second to check a coupon on my phone while Melanie babbled at a row of yogurt cups. That's the moment I saw him. He was standing by the cheese display, holding a small tub of yogurt, but not really looking at it. Maybe late 40s, shaved head, glasses, just average. The kind of face you forget as soon as you see it. But when I pushed the stroller past him, he looked down at Melanie and smiled. "Hi, Melanie," he said like he knew her. "You're even cuter in person." I stopped walking. My heart gave a weird lurch. I hadn't said her name out loud once. Not in the store. Not in the parking lot. Her onesie didn't have a name on it. I never even use a name tag on her diaper bag. Everything was blank, intentionally. Even the way I talk about her online is vague. And my social media, locked down tighter than a vault. No public posts, no geotags, no identifying photos of her face, and absolutely no names. I'd been so careful. I stared at him. He didn't look threatening, just a man with a kind face. But something in the way he smiled made my stomach churn. Too familiar. Like this wasn't the first time he'd seen her, only the first time I'd seen him. I gave a tight smile and walked away quickly. My grip on the stroller tightened. My heart was pounding by the time we hit the next aisle. I turned to look back. He wasn't there anymore. I picked up my pace. We finished up fast. I skipped over half the list, just grabbed the essentials and bolted for checkout. I kept watching my back, but never saw him again. The cashier asked if I found everything okay. I lied and said yes. At the car, I loaded Melanie into her seat and popped the trunk. That's when I saw it. A note, tucked under the driver's side windshield wiper. Just a small piece of white paper, folded once. "You're doing great, Mom." That was it. Just that. My stomach turned over. I didn't even put the groceries away before I climbed into the front seat and locked the doors. I drove straight home, checking the rearview mirror the entire time. I kept expecting to see his face behind the wheel of a car 2 lengths back. Once we were inside, I shut every blind in the house, turned on every light. I couldn't stop pacing. I checked the door locks 3 times. I called my husband at work, told him everything. He came home early. We checked the outside cameras. Nothing. Either the guy hadn't followed us, or he knew where the blind spots were. The next morning, I called the grocery store, asked to speak to security, told them what happened. They were nice enough, but I could tell they didn't believe me. They just said they'd check the cameras. 2 days later, the manager called me back. We looked at the footage. He was there. He arrived before you, spent most of his time circling the parking lot. Then he stood near the carts until you pulled in. He followed you inside, didn't buy anything, and then left right after you. My blood ran cold. He'd been waiting. They gave me the footage. I gave it to the police, filed a report, but there wasn't much they could do. He hadn't touched me, hadn't said anything overtly threatening. No license plate was visible on the video. Just a man who knew far too much about us. For a week after, I barely left the house. Every knock at the door made me freeze. Every unfamiliar car parked on the street got written down in a little notebook I kept by the window. I started sleeping with the baby monitor volume turned all the way up. Nothing else happened. No more notes, no more sightings. But the fear never really faded. I changed our routines. New grocery store, new stroller with a cover. I even got a baby carrier, so I could keep Melanie close to my chest when we were out. We parked in different spots. I wore sunglasses. I walked faster. Friends told me I was overreacting, that maybe he just guessed her name, that he might have been trying to be nice, that people don't realize how they come across. But there's a difference between a stranger saying hello and a stranger who already knows your child's name and who knew exactly what car you drove. I never saw him again, but I still think about him, what he wanted, how long he'd been watching, why he chose that moment to speak. I don't know his name. I don't even know if he was from this town or if he just passed through, but he knew mine and he knew hers, and that still keeps me up at night. Josh was 9, smart, kind, a little on the quiet side, but with a funny sense of humor when he let it out. He loved drawing monsters and reading graphic novels, and he never complained when I had to heat up leftovers or pick him up a little late from after-school care. I work long hours at a warehouse, morning shifts mostly, so our evenings were sacred. Homework, dinner, maybe a movie, then lights out. For a while, everything was calm, in a good, comfortable way. Then I noticed Josh wasn't sleeping well. He'd toss and turn, come out of his room 2, sometimes 3 times a night. Sometimes he'd just stand in the hallway, like he wasn't sure whether to come in or not. When I asked him what was going on, he said, "I just don't like the windows." That confused me. We had blackout curtains. He'd never mentioned it before. "Are you having nightmares?" I asked. He shrugged. "No, it's just, sometimes it feels like someone's watching." I thought maybe he was watching scary videos at school, or heard something from another kid. I reassured him, reminded him we always locked up at night. Even let him help me double-check the doors and windows a few evenings in a row. I even let him sleep in my room a couple nights, just to help him reset. About a week later, I was unpacking his lunchbox after school and saw something crumpled at the bottom of his backpack. I figured it was a worksheet or a snack wrapper. It wasn't. It was a note, handwritten on lined paper in thick black ink. "Tell your dad to stop locking the windows." It wasn't in Josh's handwriting. I asked him where it came from. He froze. His lips moved a little like he was trying to come up with something, then just said he didn't know. "Maybe a kid at school put it there," he said. I took it to his teacher the next morning. She seemed concerned but confused. No one had seen anything. There weren't any cameras in the classroom or the hallway by the cubbies. She promised to keep an eye out, but I could tell she didn't know what to make of it either. That night, I lay in bed thinking about how that note could have gotten into my son's backpack. Had someone followed him home? Gotten close enough to slip it in without anyone noticing? And why the windows? A few days passed. I started checking his backpack every afternoon. I told myself it was just precautionary, just in case. Then, on a Thursday, I found another note, tucked into the side pocket this time, folded like a tiny envelope. "You're lucky I don't use the roof." That one gave me chills. It was threatening, calculated. It implied someone had been near our home, maybe even on it. I filed a police report. The officer didn't shrug it off, which honestly surprised me. He suggested I install cameras, maybe get some motion lights. Said if anything else showed up, I should bring it in. That weekend, I went to a hardware store, bought 2 wireless cameras, one for the front porch and one aimed at the backyard, installed motion lights under the eaves. I upgraded our door locks, put wooden dowels in the window tracks. I went room by room every night before bed, checking every latch. It became a ritual. Josh started sleeping in my room again. I didn't want to scare him, but I needed him close. And I started sleeping like a soldier, on edge, ears straining for any sound. I'd wake up to the smallest creak or thump, heart hammering before my eyes were even open. The cameras didn't show anything at first. I checked them every morning like clockwork. Then, one Monday, the backyard feed showed a blur, a flash of movement near the far corner of the house around 2:14 a.m. It was fast, and the motion light didn't trigger. It looked like someone crouching, maybe adjusting something, maybe trying not to be seen. I paused it, zoomed in. A figure, partly obscured, ducked low against the side of the house. Not enough to make out a face, but definitely a person. And just beyond them, the outline of Josh's window. The next morning, that window was cracked open, just barely. I knew I had locked it. Josh hadn't noticed, but I had. I called the police again. They took the footage, made a report. Still, they said it wasn't clear enough for identification, and without a crime in progress, there wasn't much else they could do. I didn't know what to tell Josh. I didn't want him living in fear, but I also couldn't lie. So I told him someone was playing a bad joke, and that I was handling it. He nodded, but he stopped playing in the yard. He'd pull the curtains tighter at night. Started sleeping with a flashlight tucked under his pillow. Every little noise in the house made me jump. A branch brushing the siding, the heater kicking on. I had that gut feeling that someone had been in our space, that maybe they still were. Then, one morning, I opened his backpack and found nothing. I exhaled, thinking maybe it had stopped. But Josh handed me something at breakfast. A rock. On it, written in the same black ink, "Windows are just invitations." That was it. I called my sister, told her we were coming to stay the weekend. By Monday, I'd given notice to the landlord, and we started packing that night. We moved within the month. New apartment, second floor, new school. I bought blackout curtains for every window. Triple-checked the locks. No backyard, no yard at all. But I didn't care. We didn't need one anymore. Josh started sleeping again. The dark circles under his eyes faded. His old laugh came back, little by little. He even asked if we could go to the library again, something he hadn't done in months. But every so often, I find myself staring at the apartment windows when I brush my teeth at night, watching for shadows that shouldn't be there, listening for footsteps that never come. And I think about how close someone must have been, how long he might have been watching before we ever noticed. I still don't know how close he really got, but I don't think he was just trying to scare us. I think he was warming up for something worse. If you think these parenting stories were intense, you haven't seen what happens when they come inside. Click to watch 4 scary home invasion horror stories. It's the stuff of real nightmares. Locked doors don't always mean you're safe. Subscribe for more true horror stories that hit too close to home. Stay cautious and stay safe. Just because you don't see them doesn't mean they're not there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.